Aloha and welcome back to the Ohana Packers Edition podcast, the podcast where two dudes from halfway around the world talk everything green and gold. I'm Mike, and that's Iowa Joe. Today, we go over what can only be described as a no good hungover type of game from the Packers in Sin City. Joe, that was a letdown. um, uh, I'm sure we have many different one word descriptors that can go along with this one, but that was disappointing to see from this team after what was it, 11 days off or whatever after the Thursday night disappointment the week before, and to come out like that against a Raiders team that was definitively worse than the Lions. But do you see it any different, or you kind of uniform step with me on that?
I I'm uniform on it, uh, but if you go back to our our where we made our predictions, I actually had this one as a loss just because I figured this is what was going to happen. They were going to come out flat. They were going to do something. This was going to be the game that they were going to screw up. I didn't figure it was going to be the Falcon game. I was kind of wishy washy on the Lions game, but this one I definitely said as a loss just because we know how the Raiders are. We know how this team can be. There's so much time in between these next couple of games that you knew they were going to get lost in there somewhere. I didn't account for injuries or anything like that, but I I don't know. I was disappointed in it. I it, it really made for a capper for yesterday or Monday to have that kind of day, but we knew this was going to happen though. We knew this was a young team. We knew this there was going to be mistakes. We knew we were having a guy who only had one career start before lead the team. We'll get into it a little bit more here, but you know there were issues all over. There's not one little thing that you can pinpoint over another, but yeah, I said this in the chat room for one of the game on things today that if it were me, these guys wouldn't have a bye week break. We would be working the whole way through it. And, I don't care if it's go back to fundamentals. I don't care if it's, you know, whatever it is, but we're working. There's no break. There's no stop with this because something's got to get fixed. But we know it's a young team. We know we're going to have growing pains. They just got to start meshing.
Yeah, that's all so very true, and unfortunately, the CBA restricts them from just practicing straight through. Because I'm totally in agreement with you there. Yeah, they need a lot of work. But let's start with the good on offense. I know that's pretty limited, but the got to give this guy his props after every Packers fan has been on his back for a while. But that was AJ Dillon's best game. No, the stats don't really bear it out, but AJ ran hard. He ran physical. He looked fluid as a guy his size can look in the backfield, and he ran with good pad level. Got his first touchdown of the season, and kind of to piggyback on that, overall the run blocking did seem better. I know that it failed them at times, but those two kind of go hand in hand, especially a runner like AJ. But I thought AJ was as good as he's been in about a year in Monday's game this week.
I I was getting ready to look it up here because I wanted to look at the stats completely, but it's pretty sad when the best game of the year so far is 20 carries for 76 yards and one TD with an average of 3.8. I mean, I get it. You got to look at the good over the bad, but I, they were still using him wrong in a way, and I I wish it were better considering what kind of team we were facing. This is a team that couldn't run, defend to save their lives, and they hold us to they hold the Packers to what is it, 109 yard or 119 yards or something like that. I don't know. I'm not good at math, so trying to add them up real quick. They held Dylan to 76, Jordan Love had the next highest at 37. Patrick Taylor had 2 yards, and Christian Watson had one for -5. So when you're going against a team that can't stop the run and you can't even crack 200 yards, there's some kind of issue there. And I'm not even saying, there should have been multiple guys with 100 yards, but they should have schemed it up with a little bit more, maybe jet sweeps, get the Jaden Reed out there. They completely went away from that. So I don't know if Jaden's banged up or what. Uh, they could have done a couple of the tight end sweeps, use Musgrave. And he's somebody that when we get into the bad of it, he's somebody I want to talk about. It didn't seem like I heard anybody talk about it today, and the few things that I saw some people mention it on Twitter, but I didn't really see anybody or hear anybody talk about it in the stuff that I listened to today. But there's so much they could have done, especially to neutralize Max Crosby, because he was the only one that was really tearing things up, which we knew he was going to because that's the type of player he is. But trying to stay with the good, yeah, AJ had a decent game. The run blocking seemed better. The pass blocking seemed a little bit better considering how much Jordan was under pressure against the Lions compared to this game. Uh, uh, that's I really can't think of any. Anders, do you consider that offense, or
No,
is that
that's special teams.
okay? Well,
we'll
that
we'll
it's
let him
still
have his own
points on the
segment.
board. Um, so that's about all I can think of that came out good for the Packers. And I
Yeah,
don't even really consider that good because, like I said, I know I've been all over AJ, and AJ had a decent game, but it's still, eh, I don't know. He's still not. It still wasn't good. It was good, but it wasn't good.
it was the good for this game. No, you're
Yeah.
absolutely right about that. And not that we're grading on a curve or anything, but if you're just going on the spectrum of what was on the good end of this Packers offense for this Raiders game, it was AJ Dillon. The run blocking was a tier or two farther from that end. And then everything, as we're going to cover now, was on the other end of the spectrum. The elephant in the room that's going to be the big topic of the whole season. How is Jordan Love playing? No sugarcoating it. Jordan Love did not have a good game on Monday. Sorry, not Sunday. Monday. That was there's a whole bunch of factors you can point to. Um, Offensive line, inconsistent play, injuries, Aaron Jones not being in the game, the receivers running the wrong routes and dropping passes when Love did get them to him, Love missing some opportunities. It's been a rough last 2.5 weeks, and that half being the first half of the Saints game, and then a lot of the Lions game, and then basically all of this Raiders game, where a lot of the good things that we saw the first couple weeks and in the comeback against the Saints, those things have dried up very rapidly the past two games against the Lions and the Raiders. The part of it that's chicken and egg in terms of what is in Love's control and what isn't is these two teams, the Raiders and the Lions, have gotten pressure on him. Whether, many different people are going to say whether that's Love's fault, the Lions' fault, whatever, but you saw that the pressure definitely got to him. He was leading to some inconsistent mechanics on his throws, rushed reads, predetermining where he's going with the ball. And those are the kind of things that you do not want to see from a quarterback moving forward. Obviously, you can't write the book on him right now, but that's something that definitely needs to get cleaned up coming out of the bye. And that's going to be a big one to watch moving forward for the Packers.
Well, I kind of caught uh Clubhouse Live. I don't know if you've ever watched Clubhouse Live, Koano, but it's something Brett Christopherson and those guys do. It's a viral or a video podcast type deal, and they had Don Mikowski on, and I only caught a lot of just a little bit of the conversation, and Mikowski pretty much said that Jordan looked very tense and wasn't comfortable, and he looked like he was, like you said, predetermining the his throw who he's going to throw it to. And he said that Jordan just needs to go out there and relax more and just, scan the field and see what's going on. And we saw that, obviously the Bears aren't a good team, but we saw that during the Bears game. We saw that in the second half of the Saints game, that when he was comfortable, when he was scanning the field, when he was making his reads, he was a solid quarterback. But for, whether it's he's getting hit, so he's turning gun shy, whether, whatever's going on with it, he's just not comfortable there. So I don't know if they need to, change up the line, which I know you have pass protect on there. I thought the pass protect was a little bit better, considering it wasn't great by any means, but it was a little bit better than what it had been. Jordan was still getting pressure put on him, but it wasn't as bad as what he was getting against the Lions. Uh, but maybe they need to change up the line. Maybe they need to slot, put Tom in at guard, or maybe he's a better left tackle than he is a right tackle, or bring Yosh back out, or something like that. Hopefully this, I don't know, you say his name more than I do, that Tenuta or Tenata or whatever his name is, comes off of IR.
Danuta, yeah.
Yeah, Tenuta, and they seem to like him. We're not even seeing anything out of Caleb Jones, so right now he's just wasting a roster spot. And so I just, maybe that's what it's going to take, is just to switch up that line, get something going, and I get the run game. I know it sucks. Aaron Jones has been hurt, but you got to bring somebody in. You can't just keep relying on Patrick Taylor. You're not using Emmanuel Wilson. You're feeding constantly AJ Dillon, and that's not getting you too much. You just gotta bring somebody in. I don't know. Are we to the point where Lou Nichols can come back on the practice squad or something?
Hard to tell because you don't know what the injury settlement was, but for whatever it's worth, let's just say that the settlement was 1 or 2 weeks. The 3 weeks, the three mandatory weeks that have to be sat out, or not sat out, but that are part of the injury settlement, that's done. So now it's kind of like, what was the length of the settlement? You just say if it was 1 or 2 weeks, they can bring him back now. If it was longer than that, then you got to tack those weeks on still. But I totally agree with you. Yeah, it's hard. You had the mini buy between Thursday night and Monday night, but that's not a lot of time to incorporate someone who's not on the roster. But the buy, this would be the time, especially with LaFleur not sounding 100% confident that Jones will be back after the buy. They definitely need to shuffle that room around. And Emmanuel Wilson was a great preseason story, but so far it looks like that's all he is. I know that you don't want to really write a player off after 5 games. There's a lot of that going on with bunch of players on this roster, but we hear it all the time that running backs are dime a dozen. And the big thing that they need is they've got to find, like you said, I know that we keep going back to this name partly because a little bit of your homerism, but Tyler Goodson, they need a guy like that who fits more of the scat back, because I mean Jones is more of a scat back than what you think of a bell cow back, and that's the problem. Like you said, AJ is a problem because he's not Aaron Jones, and because he can't do the thing Jones does, this offense gets handcuffed heavily when Jones misses games, or when he's not utilized for stretches of games, because that pass, the the threat in the passing game that Jones brings, that goes away when AJ is out there. And yeah, AJ is a good check down option, especially when he just gets dropped in coverage and you kind of get him the ball. We saw that game against the Seahawks, I think it was in 2021, where he had a couple of dump offs and was able to just run through defenders after he got up to speed. But they don't have a backfield option. Patrick, like we said, Taylor and Wilson are much more like Dylan in terms of pass catching options. And they just don't have a guy who really threatens a defense out of the backfield in any way, and that you even have to raise your eyebrows that he might run some kind of semi-sophisticated route. So
Well, I might
yeah,
argue with you over the Wilson thing. We really haven't seen him. He had one snap against the Raiders, and he had a couple of snaps against the Falcons, and yeah, they didn't do much, but he really hasn't been getting any play time. All they've been doing is running AJ and bringing Patrick Taylor up. Well, I'm not going to continuously see them release a guy, sign Taylor to the active roster, play the game, release Taylor, sign him to the practice squad, and re sign the guy that they cut. Because that's exactly what they just did this week. They cut Justin Hollins, signed Patrick Taylor to the active roster, played the game, cut Taylor, re-signed Justin Hollins, and Taylor's back on the practice squad. I'm not going to continuously see that because I keep saying this. Patrick Taylor is Jag. He's just a guy. There's nothing special about him. And it's pretty sad when people think he's special because he's doing better things than what AJ Dillon's doing. It looks like he runs a little bit harder. He looks like he does this a little bit more. So and I love that you pointed out Tyler Goodson. Yeah, it's my homerism, and you just said that there was only 11 days. You can't really, bring somebody in, get them up to speed. Tyler Goodson's on Indianapolis's practice squad. He's not on the active roster. Now you could have went through the whole thing where, as far as I know, I mean, they could have added him to the active roster at some point, but I just the last time I knew he was on the practice squad. Unless they offer him more or bring him up to the 53-man roster, he's there for the picking. It's not the first time the Packers would have pulled a guy off the practice squad from another team. He could have stepped in. He definitely can give you what Patrick Taylor can give you, and he knows the system. It won't take him that long to get up to speed. So I just something's got to be done. And yeah, I know some of it has to do with up front, but we know the situation up front. They're going to open a hole, but it's not going to last that long. And until you get a guy in there that's going to hit that hole like he needs to in a quick amount of time, your run game's done. And we all know that this system is placated off of the run game. So uh, my TV's on, so you can see the lights flashing and everything. Um, so yeah, it's uh like I said, something's got to be done. You change up the line, bring in another guy, get rid of Patrick Taylor,
yep.
and
And like I said, I know that like Taylor is an sorry, not Taylor, Tyler Goodson is an option. Yeah, he is still on the Colts practice squad. I don't know how much of it is that they expected Jones. It sounded like they really thought he was going to be there, and then he tweaked something on Saturday. But yeah, and okay, that goes hand in hand with what happened on Monday, where so be it. You know, the analogy I used is um, the way that LaFleur called the game on Monday night. He looked like that guy who, we've all done it where we're getting ready to take a midterm or an exam. You write your cheat sheet up, you feel all confident going in. And then when you open up the first page of the test and you're like, this isn't the chapters that these aren't the chapters I studied. And honestly, watching the first quarter and a half of that game, it was like, what are we doing? And it's a little, it's this is where the whole it's not it's hard to tell who's at fault for what because Fleur is expecting Jones to be ready, but then Jones can't go all of a sudden on Monday night, and then you think you have a game plan for Max Crosby, and obviously they lost confidence in their ability to handle Crosby within the first couple of drives. Your receivers are running the wrong routes. Tight end is running the wrong routes. They had the sequence in the first or second drive where LaFleur just goes into Musgrave on the sideline because I'm assuming he ran the wrong route or didn't block the play properly or something. Uh, it's frustrating, and at the end of the day, part of it, the young player part of it, that's what we signed up for when we said let's start to see what the youth movement looks like. They look like a team that averages 25 years of age across the roster. There's These are the kind of game, like you said, Joe. These are the ones that you don't know which game it's gonna be on the schedule, but you know that young teams are gonna have just absolute dud games, and it's unfortunate to see it happen in back-to-back games. But sure, I'm only bringing up that they need to bounce back because the bye is coming, and the only thing that can fix their inexperience and mental mistakes is practice. So, like you said, this is where they've got to buckle down, extra film session, extra mental reps, whatever the hell it takes. They've got to strap it on and get it figured out over the bye.
One, I want to talk about Musgraves a little bit. It's great that he's this special athlete, and I appreciate that. He's got the speed. For his size, his ability is amazing. But there's something he needs to learn if he's going to play tight end in the league, and it's not blocking. Because I mean, there's a lot of guys out there that are amazing tight ends that can't block to save their life. But you can't go down on first contact. And it seemed like the whole game he was just going down on first contact. You've gotta run over guys. You've gotta use your size over some of these players. You can't just let them take you down and just go over it was so frustrating. He would get the ball, he'd make a play, but then that first guy would come in and it'd be done because he went down right away. And he's got to work on that. Uh who was it? Was it Westendorf? I think it was Westendorf that said that, and I've been saying this all off season too. They should have brought Mercedes back because that's the type of things Mercedes could have explained to these guys. I know the youth movement, I know all this stuff, but there could have been room on the roster for Mercedes just to come in and work with these guys. You can't just bring in young guys and say, "All right, well, you're on your own."
Yeah,
It doesn't work like that. You've got to have somebody in their team. Same with the wide receivers. I know it wasn't realistic to bring a guy in to the wide receiver group because he was going to take a spot from the young guys anyway. But you got to have somebody in there mentoring these guys.
yeah.
You know,
I totally agree with you that Big Dog would have been the ideal. Even he could have helped the receivers out because obviously he's not a receiver, but you know, route concepts and spacing and all that kind of stuff. He's still in that room, and obviously to help out, he would have been immensely helpful to a guy like Tucker Kraft, who, and I see a lot of people getting on Tucker Kraft. Okay, I'm not there because rookie tight ends tend to suck. That's just the history of the position. It, Musgrave's getting a lot of, like you said, there's warts to his game that are getting overlooked because of the kind of special athlete he is, and they're just gonna keep pumping targets at him because they're thinking, and it's the right thinking, is that at some point they're gonna hit a big play to him, and it's gonna change how defenses have to cover you. Of course, that's not gonna happen when you just keep running him to the flat on 2 yard outs, but that's that's also part of your playbook that gets truncated because you can't block the best defender on the other team. And lo and behold, that's something that Mercedes would have helped with if he was back again. But those are things that we can yell into the ether that they woulda, coulda, shoulda done. But They decided to go with the youth movement, and honestly, that's why too. Monday night, I threw my hands up. I shouted. I didn't even shout that much at this game. I kind of just shook my head, and um, I felt more like a disappointed father than an angry fan. But it's kind of going into that whole. It's I'm not letting it get to me that much because while yes, you wanted to see better proficiency and execution out of this offense, it is still early in the year. Love hasn't had a consistent skill position package with him through the first month plus of the season. His O line has been a revolving door. His best O line, that's another one that we can go into. Dworzinski and Westendorf brought it up on the pick six today. There were a lot of people on the timeline who said that Rashid Walker would easily replace Bakhtiari and all that kind of stuff. Games like Sunday or Monday showed how important a guy like Bakhtiari is. Crosby wouldn't have necessarily lined up against him all game, but Bakhtiari would have shut his side down so you can do things to help Zach Tom on the other side. So that's, maybe Walker gets there, but he ain't there yet. And you, that's why, like we said, Love individually, you want to see him play better. And the places you want to see him play better are the things he can control, making good decisions, going through his progressions, putting balls on target. And if guys drop them, if guys run the wrong routes, okay. But there's so many things on offense that are off schedule, out of sequence, whatever descriptor you want to put it, that I'm not choosing to get overly upset at any one person. Now, coming out of this bye, if we see a game or two where they look as disorganized as they did in these last two games going into it, and hypothetically with better help, then you got to question what's going on in the meeting rooms and stuff like that. But there was always going to be a run up to the season. I saw some people trying to post like, "Oh, look what Rodgers was doing in his fifth game as the starter," and it's like they're showing the deep pass between him and Donald Driver. There is no Donald Driver in this receiving core. That's a at the time 7 year. No, I'm doing the math wrong. That was a 10-year vet who knew exactly where he was supposed to be on the field at all times. You had two offensive tackles who one of them was a borderline all pro. The other one was just Mark Tauscher, who did whatever he had to win his rep on every play. So I'm getting a little tired of people making the lazy comparisons. Even when Love was playing better, he's his own person, and that's the only thing that I'm really looking at. So need to see better play from Love, and just need to see the whole offense as a unit bounce back after the bye.
Definitely, and yeah, I agree. There's really no comparison because there's no real veterans on this team to be helping anybody out. Bakhtiari, but he's injured. I wouldn't think he's going to any of the games if he's prepping to have surgery again. Uh, Other than that, but here's the thing: what's pretty sad is they drafted Musgrave in the second round. They drafted Kraft in the third round. They signed this Ben Sims from out he was out
The
of Baylor,
Vikings,
but yeah, from the
Vikings.
after their cuts, and he was playing better than the rest of them were. We spent the draft capital on these two big time names, and this undrafted guy that's cut from one team comes in and makes a better play than the rest of them did. So I don't know, things are weird. And yeah, I don't know, I really don't. I'm to the point where I can't really say anything about it. I
We
just
need
got to
more
go with
data.
it.
We need more data, and
Yeah,
that's the bow we're going to put on it for now. But going to the unit, from the unit where we don't have enough data points to the unit where we definitely have all the data points, this was the most Joe Barry of Joe Barry games ever. Like, it's the this is the this is the teaching tape on why you pull your hair out watching his defense, And at the same time, you look at it and go, granted, the Raiders are not a good offense or even a league average offense, but you're like, damn it, they gave up only 17 points total. Three of those was maybe the best sequence for the defense all game, other than the opening drive where they Love throws his worst pass of the season, gets picked off, and the defense stops the Raiders from scoring after a quick, a big change of possession. And yeah, obviously the first touchdown that they gave up was just, I don't even know what to call it at this point. You're playing 10 yards off of a slot in the red zone, in the low red zone, and you just give a free release, and that guy is basically walking into the end zone. But you had your Preston Smith on Devontae Adams and light boxes, but you stare at it and you just throw your hands in the air again because you're like, shoot, they got the ball back twice to Love with the game, with a chance to win. And I don't, that's about as good as I can say about this defense at this point.
Yeah, I mean, defense definitely wasn't great. They did their I don't want to say they did their best, but they did their job in a way where they kept it close.
They punched the
I
time clock.
Yeah, but I mean they kept it close. They only gave up 17 points. They were getting the ball back to the offense to be able to do what they could. It just the offense wasn't doing anything. I mean, I don't know how many times you got to get the ball back for Jordan Love to go for a game-winning drive in the fourth quarter, and and he blows it. So they were at least doing their job in a way. So it really went downhill after Quay left because Quay was on fire. Yeah, you have it here in the notes. McDuffie and Wilson played solid, and that's true too. But you can tell Wilson is just mainly a special teams guy because all they really did for him was they had him rush the passer. They didn't really drop him into coverage too much, and they didn't really do anything else with it. But McDuffie was I really like McDuffie. I think they have something there in him. If it came down to just having McDuffie and Quay, I hopefully Campbell comes back and he's the same player he was. But if it came down to just McDuffie and Quay, I think we would be set for inside linebacker. I really think both of them have played well.
Yeah, McDuffie has really done well in terms of being a drafted development prospect. He did everything you want. He came in, was a special team stalwart his first year and a half to 2 years in the league, and then has really picked up his play at his defensive position over between the back half of last season through this season. And he, like you said, he's become at minimum a league average-ish inside linebacker. And like you said, there's debates that are going to be after this season, which veterans are kept. Obviously the big one is Bakhtiari, but Campbell's one on defense. Preston's another one who Preston I thought played his best game of the season, got his first sack, had a couple nice snaps on the edge, good run stops. I think he had a couple big tackles for loss as well. The coverage play is totally not his fault. That was an absolute just that play call from start to end was a horrible one. I saw some people try to defend it and say like, well, what's Barry supposed to do when they're in 21 personnel, but then they go to empty? And I was like, so call timeout. Or Andy Herman even said just Preston should have walked up and touched Tay to get an encroachment
Yeah.
penalty and he's right because I think it was like 3rd and 7 or 8 or something like that. And my whole thing with it is I don't mind calling a zone blitz and dropping Preston into coverage. The fact is that they, that was why one person was like, oh, but they went to empty. I'm like, you don't have to show it. Like, you can still line Preston up like he's rushing. And honestly, he's probably in better position to defend the pass if he's dropping back out of off of his right outside linebacker spot. But having him 5 yards off of Devontae, any receiver, but much less Devontae, you're lucky that Preston was even in the damn picture when Devontae broke for the ball at that point. So,
His
I,
only hope would have been is if he would have played extreme press and would have just knocked Devontae on his ass.
yeah, once he gave him a running start off the line, it was over. Like I said, there were 14 different things wrong with that play, and Green Bay should have done one of like five things to, whether it's changing the playing call at the line or like Herman said, just like Preston run up and smoke him before the snap or whatever. You cannot you cannot just say like we're just gonna stick with it because me, our mothers, our dead great grandparents knew exactly where that ball was going when Preston was lined up over Devontae. But like we
And I
said,
if I
yeah,
remember right, I think at that point Savage was out.
yes,
So I
Savage went out. That was in either that. I think that was the early fourth quarter. So Savage was out at the end of the first half, and honestly, that even just like I said, it's the most mind-numbing Joe Barry defensive game where there's like a dozen individual players where you're going, what the hell was that call that got Preston on Devontae? Why are you playing so soft in the low red zone? Why are you against a team that would love to establish Josh Jacobs? Why are you playing such light, weird boxes? But then at the end of the day, you lose your one good linebacker, your I don't want to say your one good because McDuffie's been playing well, but your your up and coming star linebacker, your good, your of the two, your better safety. You and at that point, because of how they've constructed this roster and because the Cyclone was not active, we saw a couple plays before the half where friggin' Dallin Levitt was on the field, and you kind of just held your breath when you saw that happening. But they, like we said, at the end of the day, they made enough plays to, obviously not against a stellar offense, but the defense made enough plays to get the ball back to the Packers offense with chances to take the lead or at least um, get in position to score or something. So it's it's one of those. This is one of those games where people who it'll be pointed at by people in the building that the defense isn't as big of a problem as people want to make it, but in reality, if this was against a better quarterback, a better offense, we're probably not even in position to win the game at the end. So, like I said, not too much good or bad either way to say it was a typical Barry game in my opinion.
yeah, I can agree with that. I don't know. I really don't. I mean, again, like I said, they did their jobs. Was it a great job? No. Was it a horrible job? No. It was just a meh
To
job.
go back to the college analogy, C's get degrees, and that's what the Packers defense did on Monday night.
Pretty much. And I don't know if Jair's still nursing the back injury. I don't know what because he seemed a little bit off. Razul had a hell of a game. I'll
Yes,
give Zool a
yeah,
credit all day long, but uh, I don't know. I'm to the point where it's I don't know. Like I said earlier, I don't.
yeah.
It's
There's there's not much there's not many more words we need to spend on the defense in this game. They were the better of the two between the offense and defense, but more by default than due to stellar performance on their own. But getting to someone who deserves an A, that would be Anders Carlson. Yes, we are going to continue to pronounce his name correctly on this show because he is the better Carlson and it remains perfect on the season, adding two more field goals and a extra point to his tally. So Anders remains perfect on the season. Um, I wish so many other players would take his lead by who cares about practice, just perform in the game. But you know what? It's fine and dandy that someone on this roster is playing that way.
yeah, especially when we were all concerned. We're all to the point where we were thinking he was going to be our weak link. and now he's been like the best thing to happen to the team. So it really goes to show that hey, maybe Bisaccia was right about something.
Yep. And I mean, I forgot to note it down, but um, Yosh Nyman lining up over the long snapper, it finally paid off. And I forget who it was, but someone on Twitter was kind of, I think, mostly seriously, but also obviously partly joking about how much effort you could see and you could see like Yosh was almost like separating his shoulder, trying to reach as high as he could on some of the PATs he was out there, and he got his finger on that block at that field goal block at the end of the first half, and then you could tell that some of the way they were aligning, even on the last field goal that the Raiders attempted, you could tell that because the Raiders were more towards their left hash. So if you're looking at it, the obviously the NFL hashes aren't as wide as the college ones, but if you're imagining it, if you're on the left hash, you do have to kick a little bit right. But Green Bay did the opposite of what is general consensus, where they overloaded um, the side away from where you think the kick would be going, and Carlson ended up pushing it right enough that he doinked it off the post. So um, I don't know if Bisaccia just knows how to get in Dan Carlson's head, if Dan Carlson just gets brain freeze when he sees the Packers, whatever it is. The Packers seem to be his kryptonite, but overall, I thought it was a good game for the special teams. Whelan still looks to be kicking well. Of course, it's a dome and it's not cold, so we'll continue to hold reservations on that. But overall, not the special teams did well. Keyshawn seemed a little bit more reined in. We didn't see any YOLO returns from him, but um, again, I hate to keep going back to this, but I guess it was like a B plus game from special teams. There weren't any great returns, but between the field goal block and Anders staying perfect on the season, nothing to really write home about, but nothing to be upset about either.
Definitely. I mean, there's nothing more I can add with it. They were looking better. They're looking better than they had most of the early part of the season. Uh, Anders, yeah, like I said, they for the guy that we all thought was going to be the biggest concern going into this season has been the lone bright spot so far. Yeah, your coverages look pretty decent, and I, it really hurts when well, that's not the way to put it. It really sucks when other players start getting hurt because then they start pulling the special teams players in to fill in those those spots, and then you have to worry about those guys getting hurt because then it takes away from two sides of the ball. So it just I don't know. Like I said, there's got to be something to change. Uh, uh, they need to bring somebody in to be a motivational guy. I know Basacci is the type of guy that'll chew somebody's ass out and whatever, but they need somebody. If LaFleur's not going to do it, then they need to bring somebody in who's going to the just
And it's
LaFleur can
hard
be.
and it's hard for Bisaccia to do it because he is own. I know he's the associate head coach, but he's just a special teams coach. Like the reason, like like I know what you're saying, like a Dan Campbell type is because he's like an offensive coordinator or an offensive line coach or a tight end coach or something like that. He's on one side of the ball where you're kind of directly influencing the on-field play in a phase that I don't want to say matters more, but has a more tangible impact on the outcome of a game. So I agree. I don't even know what to label it, but it just seems that everyone is too much of the steady as she goes, even keeled. And like you said, Bisaccia is the only real like ass kicker on the coaching staff.
Yeah, they like I said, they just need to bring somebody in, and even if Lafleur doesn't want to do anything, he can just be say he can just look at the player and don't talk to me. You need to go talk to him right now, and just let him have at it. So it, overall, of course, it was a crappy game. Of course, nobody was happy with it because it was a loss. But you just got to put it on the shelf and get through the bye week. Hopefully, some guys will come back healthy. Hopefully, Stokes can be brought back. Maybe that Tanuda, whatever happens, they'll work out some guys. It just got to get something going. Got to get that spark in there. I know even Mike Daniels was doing some tweeting about it where they don't have the guys that play with their heads on fire right now, and they need somebody to come in and just light a fire under these guys' ass and get them going. Jair kind of runs his mouth a little bit, but he's been hurt. Uh, Quay, but then you worry about Quay because is he going to pull a stupid move or whatever if he gets too heated? And so somebody's got to come in and step up.
Yeah, totally agree. It's you kind of see maybe Rashawn is also one of those guys on defense, and it's even for him it's a little hard because he's on a snap count and stuff like that. But I mean, we didn't go into it, but he had, if you're looking for what could have been plays of the games, he had that big sack on a third down that got the ball back to the offense. So, like you said, they're just looking for they need more complementary play. You're seeing, one guy make a play here, one guy make a play there, but they're not in sequence necessarily, and it just seems like they can't just they either can't get the wheel rolling, or they can't keep it rolling when they get momentum. So, but like we said earlier, that's what comes with going the youth route, the youth movement route. You lose the ability to sense the moment and kind of get the right mojo and all that kind of stuff. And guys have to find out who's going to fill those roles and all that kind of stuff. So that's part of the self discovery. And like I said, I don't think either of us are in the position that we're burying, Love, LaFleur, the team at this point. But there's some red flags that definitely need to be pointed out and looked at, and those are the ones that we're looking forward to seeing fixed up coming out of the bye. But to put a bow on this one, Joe, who out of the like 4 or 5 players on this team was your MVP for Monday night's game?
Anders. That's the only one I can think of. Maybe Quay if Quay hadn't got hurt, but I'm just gonna say Anders just because that seems like the
He
slam dunk
deserves it.
answer.
He deserves it. No, I that's a good one. I'm gonna go with my homer pick. I'm gonna go with Rashad. I thought he played a solid game. I thought he actually did set some edges in the run game. And like I said, I kind of pointed at it when the team was down 17-13, not for the final drive, but the second to the last drive. He gets a big sack on a third down that pushes the Raiders back and forces them to punt the ball. So give me my Michigan Wolverine. LVP, I'm going to go with Jordan. A little bit of low hanging fruit, but not saying that I had like extreme. I didn't expect him to be an MVP candidate or anything like that. But like you kind of mentioned in our season preview episodes, where you wanted to see him, he didn't need to be making a ton of progression every week necessarily, but you wanted to see him do, you know, keep a certain, set up a certain base week one and just keep, improving little by little. And he's kind of done he's in a nosedive right now, and he needs to pull out of it coming out of the bye. So LVP for this week, but hoping that he'll be one of our MVPs coming out of the bye.
I, I'm gonna go with one that kind of hurts because I love the guy, but I'm gonna go Romeo. He really, like you said, kind of with Jordan, he kind of regressed and he wasn't getting open. He wasn't, and I don't know if that's because Jordan just wasn't, targeting him. I will be honest, I didn't get to watch a lot of the game. My stream broke, and and then when I started listening to it, it was getting sickening, and I just kind of tuned out there for a bit. But So I really don't know how many targets Romeo had, but it seemed like they weren't calling his name much. And I think even Troy and Buck were making those types of statements too, where the wide receivers just weren't doing anything to help out Jordan. So if I got to pick one player and not cheat like we have before, I'm just going to go Romeo and say, yeah, he didn't do anything to for this game.
Yep, had a bad drop on the final drive, the first down before the interception to Watson in the end zone. So that would have been a, I don't want to say it would have been a big play necessarily, but probably would have got to the first down, got it out of bounds and stuff. So yep, and that kind of goes back into what we were talking about earlier, that it's not any one thing that lost. It was just a systematic failure, cascade failure for the team, especially on offense this week. But that's going to do it for our wrap up of Monday night. And I think we're going to kind of do a similar thing to the team. We're going to burn the tape of this Monday night game. We saw it. We had it melt our brains a little bit because of how hard it was to watch. And it's time for us and the team to move on. But before we close out this episode, we just wanted to plug our new website that Joe has worked hard to get up and running. Um, that is ohanapackers.org. We are in the process of adding extra outside writers, but Joe and I will be working out with our schedules when we can post. I am going to try to get at least one, but hopefully 2 to 3 articles up a week. Just trying to figure out what I'm able to do in terms of workload and writing on the side. So, but keep your eyes posted on the website again, ohanapackers.org. Joe, oh, obviously the big thing there too is you can catch our um, streams of every episode of the podcast on there as well. So just a nice centralized hub for everything Ohana Packers edition.
Yeah, if you guys don't want to hunt down on like Spotify or Apple or one of the many streaming services, we're gonna post the episodes up on there. I do have one article up already. I called the Bakhtiari Enigma. Um, it's been my first article I've wrote in like 17 years, so please be kind. Uh, so we really want to start getting this thing rolling. Got some solid guests coming that's gonna give us some uh occasional articles once in a while. And we got some stuff in the works, so please be on the lookout or on keep your eyes out for it and let us know uh what you think and what needs to be changed or what you like or don't like. And we're pretty open and honest, and we'll badmouth you behind your back, but we'll accept it up front.
Begrudgingly. We're here for the people until we're not. Nah. But no, just wanted to make sure that you guys know everything we're up to. But yep, I think that we are gonna take a break for the rest of this week because obviously this is the bye, so no opponent to scout this week, and
So
we will.
yeah, so just to kind of put it out there, we didn't have the episode Tuesday, so this episode is going to drop Thursday, and then we should go be able to go back to our normal Tuesday, Thursday thing next week. But for this week, there was no episode Tuesday. That episode moves to Thursday, and we'll go from there.
Yep, but we want to thank you for joining us on this edition of the Ohana Packers Edition podcast. I need to do something about that. Too many additions. It's rattling my brain. But please follow the podcast on Twitter and on the website, ohanapackers.org, ohana_packers, at ohana_packers on Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it at this point. You can follow me at Kawano Mike. You can follow Joe, Iowa Joe, at Iowa_Joe86. please, excuse me, please do follow the podcast on your preferred podcast streaming options, Spotify, Google Podcasts, wherever you like to find them. Please give us a like, a subscription, and please do leave comments. We do appreciate feedback. But yep, we're gonna, just like the team, we're gonna lick our wounds over the bye, and we'll be back ready to fly, or ready for the Packers to ready to go against Russ and the Broncos. So until then, mahalo for listening, and go Pack Go.